This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
Hello and welcome to Why Small Business Matters. I'm Sarah Stephenson, part of the Help to Grow management team at Northumbria University. Today I'm joined by Andrew Silver, founder of 360 Growth Partners. This podcast is all about practical solutions, and we hope today to offer a masterclass for our listeners. We're going to be talking about three areas of great interest to Andrew: business partnering, performance management, and turning strategy into results.
Critical, particularly for people who've been running their own business for a long time, we can become slightly immune to feedback because we don't get it. So go ask for it. So go ask for that feedback.
Business owner, business partner, mentor and board member, Andrew helps SMEs reach their potential. So, hello and welcome to today's Why Small Business Matters. And I'd like to start off, if you could just give me a bit of background about you and your business.
Thank you very much. Yes, nice to be here. And great, bearing in mind that I've had such a long connection to Northumbria. I studied 40 years ago, to not quite the date. So I've also had the last 8 years working on the business advisory board of the business school at Northumbria. So it's great to be able to give a bit of insight as to perhaps what we do, how we do it, and hopefully some useful tips that might help. But to answer your first question, just a bit of background. I've been in business far too long to give you the timescale. Most of my career was in the hospitality world, good 20 years. And then after that, I went into the healthcare. My, I guess, common denominator throughout all that time was personal growth in terms of business people and also business growth. So if you cut through that career of nearly 35 years, I was very involved in developing people and trying to help businesses navigate some of the challenges of growth. And going back now 8 years, when we set up 360 Growth Partners, the primary reason behind it was to share some of that journey, share some of that, trying to avoid various pitfalls as we grew, and working out how we could assist particularly Northeast businesses in their own journey. So setting that up 8 years ago, we set out to help mentor, I guess, business owners, but also give them practical advice on the challenges that they would face on that growth journey. So we've been doing that now for 8 years. We work across a wide spectrum of businesses. We're agnostic in how we look at that. So we're not sector specific, but we do spend a lot of time trying to evaluate mindset. So we try and work with people that want to grow their businesses, but also are personally of a growth mindset. So i.e. they're quite happy to understand that they may have to change on that journey. So here we are now, 8 years down the track, and we are now looking to expand into other areas. Perhaps I'll touch on a bit later.
And I think it's worth saying you prefer to describe yourself as a business partner rather than a business consultant. And I think that's what we're going to be discussing today, isn't it? How you can business partner to really help those businesses understand the challenges and their true value and how you can help them grow.
So having worked in business for a long period of time, one of the challenges was we worked with a lot of consultants, and I'm not bad-mouthing consultants here. They do a great job. But often the challenges for small businesses is that once you've given me the advice, and I'm actually very interested in how we practically apply it. So because we'd all been in businesses for many years, we knew how to also apply the strategic thinking or to apply the report that the consultant gave. So when we set up, we called ourselves 360 Growth Partners deliberately because we wanted to look at how we would genuinely partner businesses on their growth journey. So what we start with a lot is looking at the insight phase, which is very much trying to understand the business and where they're going and how we might navigate that journey together. So one of our core values is collaboration, and we try to make sure that we are evaluating the full picture for that business and then working out very clearly the roles and responsibilities of both us as the business partner and also the various members of the team or the leaders of the team. The challenge with consultant side of things is that often when it gets difficult, they're nowhere to be seen, that they've left the room because they've done their report, they've submitted what they think needs to be done, and they leave the owner, leader of the business to fathom out how they put that into action. So the fundamental piece of what we try and do is work with that owner on who's going to do what, how are we going to do that, and when are we going to do it. And therefore, we've both got a bit of accountability both ways round. I'm held to account for certain stuff, but so's the business and their team held for other accountabilities.
So in terms of working closely with leaders to build their organisational and their people capabilities, I'd love you to take us through how you would perhaps start the process with a company that you've been asked to come into. I believe you go through some diagnostics to begin with.
Yeah. We I think whether it's entirely the right use of our personality profile, the DISC profile, we're very keen to work out early on whether there's going to be a fit. So fit is very, very important from both a mentoring capacity, but also from if we're going to partner together for a long period of time, let's work out whether actually we get out the same side of bed, as I would call it. So we do some personality profiling using the DISC profile, not to put people in boxes, but to work out whether this person perhaps is wanting to understand more about themselves, more about how they lead, and more about how they will integrate or work with somebody that perhaps is going to at times tell them things they don't want to hear. So we do quite a bit of diagnostics around a DISC profile, but we also then go through a fairly significant insight phase. So we won't necessarily do project work. We will try and work with companies where we can understand the big picture, and we will try and get some sort of insight by doing what I call some of the normal diagnostics in terms of SWOTs and pestles and creating a balanced scorecard for a report, but fundamentally trying to understand the individuals within that business and where they're at. Because I think it would be arrogant for us as a business partner to believe that we understand their business without doing that insight. So the very first part is diagnostic, insight, and then we will start to work on the outputs of sort of what we've identified, which, as I say, will normally be doing some work with some customers, doing some work with people inside the organization, and then putting that into a RAG-rated report, which will be the basis of future work together.
So understanding the business model in depth really means that you've got to understand their drivers and maybe even their underlying financial situation. How receptive are businesses to you to open up to all that?
Often our types of conversation will start with a recommendation, normally from either an existing client or from somebody else that knows us in the network. We will have probably just a cup of coffee and a chat and talk about them personally, where they're going, what their own journey is as a leader, but also the fundamental challenges they've got as a business. We will then move that forward to let's have another conversation. Are you happy to do a DISC? And we'll eventually get to the stage where we go, we want to do some insight into your business. We need to lift the bonnet on all aspects. Are you happy to share financials? And by that time, I think you've already worked out whether there's a dynamic that is going to be successful. I'm yet to have a company, I think, turn around and go, no, I won't share my financials. I think they see that as a fundamental part of us understanding their world and also a key part of understanding what the journey is going to look like going forward. And we can get an awful lot out of a set of financials to understand someone's business and how it works.
So as part of your assessment process, how do you go about sifting through data and pulling together that evidence that you need to design solutions and strategies to take that business forward?
So we will ordinarily, we'll go through a conversation with the leader, warts and all. We'll have various conversations with some of the leadership team, and then we will try and talk to other people, perhaps slightly lower down the organization, to understand what it feels like and what the actual organization truly is like from their perspective. So we'll do a lot of conversation with individuals within the business. We will then talk to certain customers to try and get a customer view on the business. And then we will ask for insight into, let's say, their financials, systems, processes, marketing. So most of that is a conversation. So it is just a dialogue with the person that's responsible for that area to understand where they are, where they're going, perhaps what they're missing. And then that will go into a more finite document to go back to the leadership team to go, this is what we see, this is what our assessment is, this is what we would recommend, how do we do it? And that's when we would probably end up going into a strategic conversation around how do we plan out the next year, 3 years, whatever that timescale is. In the world that we live in, anything past 3 years is probably not worth thinking about. So we focus heavily on what's the vision for the future, but we then get into, in the next 12 months, what do we need to get done? Because lots of businesses, that's the challenge of getting started.
And just thinking about the people side of the business, how often does it end up being an HR or leadership and development type of issue within the business, rather than anything to do with sales or how they're actually running the business?
Frequently. I think trying to understand the individuals within the organization, the culture of the organization, how that organization manages its people, how it develops its people. Often businesses that we come across are perhaps grown quite fast, not done a huge amount of development of the individuals within the business. They're at a point in time where they now need to explore what does their leadership team need to look like for the future. Perhaps they're an entrepreneur that's done most of the things themselves previously. They're now starting to delegate that responsibility to others. Perhaps the team aren't entirely clear what that journey looks like. So we try and work out who are those senior leaders, what are the roles and responsibilities within that team, how do we encourage the owner and leader to delegate more to that team, and therefore understanding what the plan is. We know there's capability gaps either individually, as in we need to find some individuals, or the individuals that are there have some development needs to try and help them grow into their roles to be able to help the business grow.
Does that sometimes mean that you have to challenge the business leader? I mean, are they always open to these ideas, or do you sometimes find a bit of resistance in what you're suggesting?
Yes, undoubtedly. Someone coming in and sort of advising somebody how to run their business. Most of these people have not got to where they've got to without some great skills, and therefore they have opinions, of course. But I think if you spend some time together working on what the overall plan is and the overall strategy, it becomes fairly obvious through conversation where perhaps they've got some gaps, and also the types of leader we work with, understanding we've done some of the disc profiling, are aware that they don't have all the answers. So they are interested in having someone else to help steer the ship and perhaps give advice. Of course, there are times that they will go, I'm not for turning on a certain issue, and that's fine. We'll work our way through that. But most of the time, they are at that point where they know they've got to develop a senior leadership team who are going to help run perhaps take over in the future the business, and they need to be doing more than what I call the technical side of the business. They need to be leading it and managing people. And that's a skill that often gets left behind.
You mentioned the fact that you see it as business partnering and that you work closely alongside these businesses. It sounds as though it's a fairly long-winded process. I mean, you're not just going in and providing a solution and walking away again. How long do you tend to work with these businesses for?
It does vary. Bearing in mind, we tend not to do project work, so there is a bit of a flow to how this works. We would get involved in sort of normally a strategy piece of work, which can last 3 to 4 months to get to the point where we've literally agreed the big picture, as I would call it. We've agreed what we create a strategy house, which is sort of a one-pager that gives us clarity as to how everything aligns to that longer-term vision. We will agree a budget. We will agree a roadmap. So all of those tools take us probably 3 to 4 months to conclude. What we've then got is a shared vision. And that's a shared vision for us and for them as to where they're going and how we will support them and how they will get on and do what they need to do. Ordinarily, that turns out into there's other areas that need development. So there might be a marketing strategy that needs some work on, or there might be certain leaders that are obvious that they perhaps could do with some coaching or some development. Or indeed, it could be that actually the technology of the organization is such that it's not fit for purpose or fit for growth. So we would work on a bit of a technology roadmap to sort of assess what that would look like as on that journey. So to answer your question, we have certain clients that we've worked with for 6 years, 7 years, virtually since we started. That involvement will lessen at times, and sometimes it might just be purely me working with the owner on a sort of more mentoring capacity, just checking in every month to see where they're at and how things are progressing. So it does vary, but absolutely right. In the partnering capacity, we have sort of we're interested in long-term relationships of depth and where we can add some significant value because we understand their world and we're going through the pain together of when we hit the bumps. So it could be a long journey.
Now, the other area I'd like to discuss with you today is something that comes up time and time again when we're talking to businesses on Help to Grow management that we run at the university, is performance management and what that really means and what that culture can look like within your organisation. Particularly at the moment, people are feeling that some employees are feeling entitled or they're finding retention hard. So I'd really like to explore a little bit about, for you, what performance management culture looks like in some of the businesses that you talk to.
Often when someone says performance management, maybe this is slightly dated, I don't know, but people run for the hills. Oh my goodness, why would I want performance management? That sounds like a painful experience. However, my belief is that everyone needs performance management, and it should be seen as a positive, not as a negative. Of course, how it's applied and how it's executed might make it feel different to different organizations. However, as far as I see it as the opportunity for someone to take interest in me as an individual about my growth. And I'm a great believer that when we work with organizations or we work in organizations, our jobs as leaders are to help people on their journey of discovery or their journey to their own personal growth. So when I look at performance management, to me, it is very much part of how does the individual develop alongside the organization? What interventions do they need within the business, without the business, to help them on their journey? And aligned to that, how does that therefore help support the growth of the organization? So we talk a lot about the employee journey. And so we pick apart what that looks like in an organization. So at the outset, how do you recruit people? Do you recruit people according to values and behaviors? Do you do just technical competence, or do you actually look at the individual attitudinally? Once you've recruited them, what happens next? What does the induction look like? So often in small businesses, the induction is where it fails because we're too busy. We're too busy to give them the time to be inducted effectively. But of course, we see the result of that further down the line. So what we're trying to do is make sure there's a robust induction process. So I get to not only know where the business is going, I spend some time with the owner of the business to explore the why of the business. And then I get into talking to other people as to what they do. So I get an overall picture in that induction of where the business is going. And then I get into the weeds of the mechanics of how my job might work and where the toilets are, where the coffee machine is. So that's that. And then that moves from an induction phase to, okay, how do we now manage that person on an ongoing basis? So I've done, for 35 years, I've done monthly one-to-ones with people sitting in organizations. Why? Because it's a temperature check, because it enables me to assess, how am I doing as a business manager? Am I doing a good job at managing somebody or not? How is that person both personally and professionally? And where are we against some set of objectives? And actually, are we holding them to account to whether they're delivering or not? So that monthly one-to-one becomes a critical part of performance management. So I look at performance management on two levels. Performance management on an individual basis. How is that person? Do they have a personal development plan? Where are they going on their own journey? And then do I have the anchors and the tools within the business to ensure that there is an overall management of process and management of people to make sure that the business grows according to a set of objectives.
And I suppose everybody has different career aspirations. Some people will want to ultimately run a company or achieve a certain level in their career, whereas other people will perhaps have a slightly different view over their development.
Absolutely. And it's identifying that. So we're not robots. So some people, as you say, want to come do a great job, go home. That's great. But how do I make sure that the person is able to do that within an environment that's supportive?
And I suppose the other advantage is with succession planning. If you understand what's happening within your organisation and who is developing and who's going to stay, you have a much better idea as a business manager or owner over who's coming forward and where they want to be. Totally.
And if you're developing a senior leadership team, lots of the businesses we work with, you probably are developing a senior leadership team on the basis that you want to have a slightly different role in your business. Maybe you want to be more ambassadorial. Maybe you want to do sort of more of the front end sort of networking or development of other products or other services, leaving others to grow into being able to run the business without you. And to me, the true test of whether we're making progress with an organization is whether that leader could almost go on a 2-week holiday and not worry too much at all as what's going on, because he knows it's being run effectively in their absence. And for entrepreneurs, that's a big shout. That's a big face for entrepreneurs who have probably grown up with running all aspects of their business.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. Find out how Northumbria University can help your business thrive through the Help to Grow management program. Delivered by leading small business and enterprise experts from Northumbria University, with the support of leading figures from industry and experienced entrepreneurs. The program supports senior managers of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their business's performance, resilience, and long-term growth. The 12-week program is 90% funded by the government, and the fee payable by participants is £750, and has been designed to allow participants to complete it alongside full-time work. The in-depth, high-quality curriculum supports you to build your capabilities in leadership, innovation, digital adoption, employee engagement, marketing, responsible business, and financial management. By the end of the program, you'll develop a business growth plan to help you lead your business to realize its potential. To find out more about the program, the modules, eligibility, and fees and delivery dates, go to northumbria.ac.uk/help-to-grow. You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. I'm Sarah Stephenson, part of the Help to Grow management team at Northumbria University.
Today I'm talking to Andrew Silver of 360 Growth Partners. I'd like to turn now to really a bit of a masterclass for our listeners. So in the podcast, we try to offer practical solutions to people listening. And I'd like to turn a little bit to how you would turn a strategy that you've described with one of your businesses into results. So how do you create a roadmap and a strategy, and then how do you go about navigating it and implementing it? Take us through that process.
We will work together on creating a one-page strategy house. That strategy house has a set of overarching, I guess, what is the vision and the mission of the business. We will then work on what are the fundamental strategic objectives that we're looking to achieve in the next 12 months. That's probably the time scale we'll look at. We will then break that down into what we call pillars of the house, which is very much the various functional areas as you would appreciate a business runs. So marketing, operations, finance. And then we will work out within that what are the key areas that or key objectives that we feel we need to achieve in the next 12 months. Aligned with that, we also start to ask ourselves the question, what are the critical performance indicators, the KPIs that the business will stand or fall by? And we look at that not just by our name, we look at it from a 360 perspective. So lots of companies will have relatively easy financial metrics because we can go, well, what does the sales look like? What's the EBITDA look like? What's the EBITDA percentage, etc. But actually what we also want to appreciate is, are we doing the right job, the best job for our clients? So are we doing client satisfaction or client evaluation? What does that look like? Is there a measure, literally a sort of metric that we can use in that area? Marketing's probably an easier area these days to actually quantify. So we'll then look at what are the critical marketing metrics. But ultimately, that's all about, are we generating the right awareness within our business? Are we then getting the right engagement? And then what are we looking at? What's the conversion that start to look like? So we sort of draw up a picture of where the business is going long term. What's the short term objectives? How are we going to measure that from a sort of KPI perspective? And then once we get into the sort of functional areas, we'll then start to weave into or dive into some more detail out some metrics for those individual pillars. So once we've got that house, and we're all comfortable that looks like the plan for the next 12 months, we'll convert that into an actionable document, into a roadmap. And that's pretty much turning that into a set of quarterly objectives. The next challenge in most organizations is if there's a variety of projects that we're going to be working on in the next 12 months, how do we manage those projects and how do we report against those projects? So we will then more than likely either suggest a tool, so something like Monday.com as a project management tool, or the organization already has a method within its business as to how it manages projects and puts them on timelines and makes sure that they're delivering against those. So that starts to build then a picture of activity that we're working on 360 with the client, what the client's working on. And then we will put in what I call relatively simple forums to review progress. So we'll monitor. I end up doing what I call business reviews with lots of our organizations on a monthly basis, which is a snapshot of where the business is at. We'll reference the house, the roadmap, to check in where we are against those. And then we'll adapt accordingly. So life changes. And the underlie of all of that is we'll also be normally doing work with the individuals within the business to help them be able to deliver against that roadmap.
I'm just wondering whether you could tell us a little bit about some examples without, going into detail about the businesses that you've helped, but give us some examples of perhaps some roadmaps of businesses that you've worked with recently.
A current organisation we're working with who are actually in the manufacturing space, we're trying to work with them on how they develop a leadership team. So we literally have got into assessing who should be in that leadership team, working out what the purpose is of that forum, working out how will we report in that forum, if we will report, how will that take the project management tool that I just referenced and use that on a day-to-day basis, and how will they then be able to evaluate whether they're achieving against it. So they've got a RAG-rated system within that Monday.com, which then gives them a clarity of how they're doing against the various elements that they've agreed that were sitting on the roadmap. But all of that takes training. So alongside it, we're doing work with them on what does their one-to-ones and their ongoing PDR process look like, so we can assess whether the people are struggling with that new tool or struggling with the new way of working, and how they're delivering against their own set of individual objectives. And that's a very collaborative way of working. We might have some of the answers and the organization themselves will have others. So they will be working on that project plan, as it were, on a day in, day out basis.
We mentioned previously culture when we were talking about performance management, but I wondered whether within when you're talking to businesses about the projects that you're working on, how leading change within the organisation becomes an issue and bringing the staff along with them.
Absolutely. So I think when we finished the initial strategic piece of work, bearing in mind we've talked to probably quite a lot of people in the organisation to get there, we will then work out how do we best ensure that everyone's on the same page. So I'm literally this week heading to a strategy session for the wider team to talk through the plans and what they look like and take feedback on, have we missed anything? Is there anything that is worrying others that we haven't covered? To then, work out how are they best involved? And when we do work around understanding what the plan looks like, we also often look at, does the culture support getting the job done? So what I mean by that is, what does the how look like? So core values and behaviors are the critical ingredients for driving change and driving growth, but in the right way. So what do those values look like in the organization? So when we are then measuring people or evaluating performance on an ongoing basis, we're not just doing it on a technical capacity, we're doing it on are we manifesting, living and breathing the core values of the organization in what we do and what we say and how we operate. So if there isn't a clear culture and values in the organization, we will work with the organization on it. But again, our principle is we want that to become very practical as to how does that then live and breathe through the organization, through the HR systems and processes. So the core values and behaviors are a critical piece of how that business wants to grow, not just the what of what it's going to be doing to grow.
And for those listeners who aren't necessarily in a position at the moment to take on a business partner who see issues within their business currently and would like to grow their business, have you got any practical tips for them?
Two key things. Great leaders, in my opinion, do reflection, and they make time for reflection. So reflection on where they're going as a business, but reflection on them as individuals. So one of my first comments will be take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, actually, what's the job that you're there to do and how well are you doing it? And the number of business owners I will talk to and I'll go, what's your role? And they go, well, I own it. And I said, no, that's not a role. That's your shareholding, almost capacity within the business. Actually, this is more about what is your role and how you fulfill it. We're only as good a manager as the people we manage. And if someone is turning around going, actually, I don't think you're a great manager, I should be looking in the mirror and working out how can I do that better. So I think first tip is do take some time out to reflect on where you're going, but also reflect on your own ability as a leader and whether you are open to feedback, and are you getting feedback? So critical, particularly for people who've been running their own business for a long time, we can become slightly immune to feedback because we don't get it. So go ask for it. So go ask for that feedback. So I think that would be one aspect of it. I also think there's a have crucial conversations when you need them. I think there's a real danger that as humans we don't like challenge. We don't like difficult conversations. We don't want to, so we'll try and avoid it. The challenge with avoiding it is it doesn't go away. It just gets worse. So if you know that one of your team is not particularly firing on all cylinders, go and ask some questions. There's a famous quote: "Be curious, be curious." So I think asking questions can help you fill the blanks. Don't assume that everything is fine, and have regular conversations with your team members, and make sure that that's not just literally about their objectives. It is about them as human beings and how they're faring and how they're doing, and how can you help.
Andrew, if you could just give me one thing for our listeners today that you would advise them to do as a business in 2025.
Well, I mean, the obvious I'm going to say, and in some ways you're going to go, well, why wouldn't you say that? Is go and find an external voice. So just go and find somebody who can give you a different perspective on your business, particularly as owner-operators. It's very easy to get tunnel vision on the way it looks from your perspective. Finding someone, call them critical friend, who can give you an external view of the business and the challenges and where you might be going, and also, as I said earlier, about your personal leadership style, I think is invaluable. So I know that sounds a bit like, well, why wouldn't you say that? Of course, but I think finding another person, whether that's through a network, whether that's through going to join some of the peer groups that are out there, or whether that's literally finding a sort of someone like us and going, even let's just sit down and have a chat and have a coffee. It might go nowhere, but actually you might just learn something from that conversation that either becomes a future partnership or just you learn something from that coffee that's invaluable.
And if anybody wants to get in touch with you today after listening to the podcast, how could they get in touch with you directly, Andrew?
Via our website. We have an inquiry form on our website, or they can find me on LinkedIn. But 360 Growth Partners is our website, so it doesn't take long to navigate through that website. It's not a large one to find me, or as I say, just find me on LinkedIn.
Well, it's been a delight to talk to you today. Thanks again for coming on Why Small Business Matters.
Thank you very much indeed for having me. Much appreciated.
My thanks again to Andrew Silver from 360 Growth Partners. If you've enjoyed today's episode, why not go to our website and find out more about the wide range of topics that we've covered over the last 3.5 years. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back again soon with another episode.